whenever and wherever you're watching this live stream. And in this live stream, I'm going to talk about high performance lessons from the best on becoming your best. So, people might ask, what gives me license to be able to utilize that for myself? Um, be it as I'm streaming to LinkedIn, that obviously has my all the accolades that I've achieved in my lifetime. Some are obviously behind me. So I have, and this is not to brag or to boast. Obviously, I've got a sports science degree that I specialize in sports psychology. I've got a postgrad in sociology of sport and exercise, and then I spent just over a decade in elite sport. So, in terms of knowing high performance almost inside and out from the inside, obviously, I think I'm one of, if not, I won't say the most influential person to be able to talk on the subject, but be it, I'm going to touch upon it from a conversation I had today about obviously taking responsibility. And what I mean by taking responsibility to become the best version of yourself is obviously I'm going to give not my cap to the actual where the title comes from is the podcast is the high performance podcast. So obviously go and listen to that. I listen to it for periodically, but in the conversation I had today, obviously I touched upon the person needed to take responsibility for their actions. And what I mean by that is obviously take back control on the controllables, as I put it. Be able to control what you're able to do from a psychological perspective, a mindset perspective, a nutritional component. That, hey, if I want to become the best version of myself, however that looks, whatever the goal is it that you envision or have visible for yourself, you can obviously go after it. So if you focus on altering your mindset, so your habits and your behaviors, obviously the book High Performance talks about a mindset as inside circles that are similar circumference, and obviously behavior is on the outside of that. That is obviously to create a culture from a perspective of team sport, because on the outside of that is team. But if what I talked about, especially last week, more so on Facebook than anything other than any other two platforms that I'm streaming to today, was more around emotional intelligence. So emotional intelligence touches upon self-awareness. So self-awareness is a massive tool to be able to reflect on what I am doing in order to get to obviously my end goal. Where people maybe become unstuck is they fall into this trap of imposter syndrome, or I'll call it perfectionism to put it lightly, is they are inherently very negative towards themselves. So they wouldn't tolerate it from somebody else. Because of the conversation I had with the person today, they would have thrown the person outside of the house if they showed any ounce of judgment towards themselves. But for whatever reason, with the human psyche that we've got, that we until we become self-aware, we tolerate this behavior for ourselves of being negative, of being in this loop of, well, I'm going to judge myself critically and sometimes unjustly in comparison to somebody else, which is that is quote unquote perfectionism, 101. But what constitutes high performance, and why I came up with the tagline today of it is I watched it's an advert through I've got Brendan Burchard's book because there's High Performance Habits, and he was describing where people that were successful had bad relationships. I agree with that because most people sacrifice one thing in order to have something else. And obviously I was too commonplace with that. However, where I don't agree with what he said in terms of it doesn't constitute high performance, me coming from a disabled background is a massive slap in the face. Because to say that we aren't high achievers because of different factors that constitute success, for me, obviously, it's probably raw, and I'm being vulnerable with this because it touched a nerve. It triggered me because ultimately, I believe, and this is ultimately my opinion, that in order for a disabled athlete to achieve high performance, they have to sacrifice a hell of a lot more than, say, an able-bodied individual. That's just me speaking. And probably a few athletes that are disabled that maybe if they see this would agree with me that from a physiological standpoint, just from the daily grind of having a disability is hard enough, but you couple that with trying to be the best athlete in this sense as you can be, your disability is going to hold you back to some extent because there's limits on what the disability will and won't allow you to be able to do. So you're pushing those boundaries and you're testing those limits to their extremes. So for somebody within the self-development space to say that those individuals aren't high performers is probably unjust because yes, they're very, very successful, but because they have a innately what we'll call a flaw of one aspect of their area is going to obviously be sacrificed as a result. So mine was obviously my social life, and the girls weren't even in the equation. So people might find that surprising that I'll admit to that, but obviously that was the truth. But that is predicated on a culture that I was brought into of swimming. Giving, I'm not going to do it as a symbol because people might misconstrue it as something else, so I won't do the symbol. But as in, swimming taught me to have this triangle of on one side is an education, one side is a sport, and one is your social life. So one has got to give in order for you to be successful in the long run to do what you wanted to be successful in. And I'm not saying for everybody else this does not have to be the case. Uh, in relation to either exercise, nutrition, or your habits and your behaviors and your mindset, they can all go into one. Because it's a fine balance between not being restrictive in one. So be it, we'll use nutrition because that's the easy one to show the example of. That is obviously what quote unquote are fad diets. They're restrictive, and some are going to work, some are not going to work. Some are going to work for some people, and some people are going to not. But in all of them, in order for them to be successful, you have to instill discipline. You have to instill consistency in order to reap the seed that you sowed. And this is evident that this is why I don't agree with Brendan Burchard saying that because of somebody lacking in one element of their life or foregoing it altogether to at the betterment of another is not high performance. To say that my career wasn't high performance because I was taught to almost push one aspect of what makes up a human being, is obviously the social aspect of it. Of if you're extroverted, obviously it's easier coming than somebody that's introverted. But to say that that's not high performance, and he only backs up with 5 key components of high performance, when in fact there's double that, is a little bit subjugated and subjective, because ultimately, what is wrong with the people looking at the 5 other key components of high performance? Obviously, the book High Performance with Damien Hughes and I can't remember Jake's last name, but he's been on the BBC and things like that. From a sport perspective, talk about 8. So somebody's got to be wrong along the lines of ultimately Damien is a psychologist consultant. Brendan Broussard is in the realms of obviously personal development. So one of them has to be wrong, and obviously from my perspective, how you can learn from those, we'll call them high achievers, because then I don't pop anybody's balloon, is that in order for, in my case, to have been successful in that domain, and I glossed over this a lot for that decade, is I did the basics over and over and over and over again. It didn't matter if it was in the sport of volleyball that's behind me, rowing, that's in the picture that's in the other room, and swimming is also in the other room. Literally, I did day in, day out, probably something that I didn't enjoy. I know that's probably why I didn't like swimming. I like competing, but I didn't like practice. But in order to don't have a stammer, to reach those heights of high performance, we have to do the basics, the fundamentals correctly. So, be it, I've mentioned this on a few videos before. I can't remember the name of the athlete in question that mentioned it on LinkedIn, is this obsession with that's taken from, it's taken out of context. Is probably the best way of putting it. Team Sky's marginal gain, so the 1%. My podcast does it as well, so I might even get rid of the tagline of 1% better every day. That if we get obsessive with trying to improve those 1%, and we don't focus on the other 99%, ultimately we're not going to move the needle very far, and we're focusing on the wrong thing. So if we focus on the 99 things that fundamentally underpin everything in this temple that we're trying to create, we're going to do the simple things over and over again, and they become a habit, and they become a behavior, and then they become a character of that person. But for whatever reason, there's become this obsession with what can we take from sport. So there's, gosh, probably if I put that title into Google, high performance, I'm going to get loads of topics back in terms of podcast. But in order to get there, we've got to do the hard graft. We've got to do the things that are not easy. We've got to do the things that are not fun. We've got to do the things that are hard. Because over time, through repetition, these things become easier. And as I put it to clients, people that I've spoken to, if we focus on this and remember that everybody started here as a beginner, and the outcome and the actual result is to get to here through hours and hours of beating at our craft, the cream rises to the top. But I think what people need to not misinterpret is if I focus on this will take care of itself. No, it won't. It's the other way around. So through a society that we've created through convenience, we've mished it the wrong way around. That obviously, I've spoken to individuals that said, "Oh, if I could get to things to happen overnight, I would choose that." Okay, that sounds like a crap existence, in my opinion, because ultimately, if you're watching college football in the US, Deion Sanders is literally giving the players no numbers on their jerseys. You got to earn and that's old school. But I'm 20 years younger than, and I agree with that as a philosophy 100%. Because in order to maximize and really be grateful for what you've got, you're gonna have to fight and claw with your fingernails, and that's obviously from a movie. But these aspects of 1 inch at a time, fighting for every inch, in some cases is not useful for most people. They need to look at a bigger picture. Let's take the whole field. As if I can get from down here to down here in my own time frame, I'm not going to be comparable to anybody because I'm literally focused on my journey. I might use somebody as competition along the way to spur some motivation along the way. There's nothing wrong with external motivation from time to time, but the big why factor is, why is the not inherently intrinsic inside you. So why is there no desire that's fueling you to want you to either start, for you to continue, or to finish? Because I mentioned this the other day of an Instagram, like, to me it speaks to me because ultimately it's the truth. Literally, it baffles me why some people are a little bit hell set on not starting. What is it that scares you in the future? Ultimately, everybody's going to have a fear of something, but that uncertainty can be good and bad. So why not take that initial thing of at least try, and that continuation as, because of this other notion of we're obsessed with the convenience, we've got attention going all over the place. So that'd be one falter as why people don't continue or get stuck at the very nearest the beginning. And it's the same for those that don't finish. Because ultimately, I'm not saying if your goal is altered, there's nothing wrong with that, because that's fine, because that's a tangent, that's a pivot. But if you've lost focus in terms of, oh, there's a nice shiny object over there, and you've not actually reached your goal, I would question why not. And obviously, it's more of a rant video than anything else today. But obviously, from those both, I'll link the in the comments on all the platforms, links to the books, links to the podcast, because you can obviously take your own impression on. You might not agree with me. That's fine. You might agree with some of what I'm saying, but this is where you need to take it on board in case to your own journey, is to look at some of these things as, okay, can I take a bit from here? Can I take a bit from there? And then mash it all together, and then away we go. So the nitty gritty of it, I think people do blame motivation for a lot of things as, oh, it's not there. I'm lacking the willpower. It's like, that's not true. It comes down to discipline and consistency. Did I always have consistency and discipline? Consistency probably a little bit more, but discipline, I did have to seek out external motivation. I'd love to find the BBC doc that gave me loads of motivation at one particular moment, because then I could show people that I was on top of the world and for whatever reason, I couldn't motivate myself to get up again to do my second world champs. I obviously made the team, but I shouldn't have had to resorted to watching a TV program in my student dorm to motivate me to push harder in training or practice. It's not a regret, as in I probably would do it slightly different. As okay, well, James, have you executed on everything that you wanted to achieve? I didn't, because I don't have a gold medal, either in a safe or somewhere in my house. But the point that I want to make is for somebody to say that I wasn't a high performer because of sacrificing on something else, that was the lay of the land 20 years ago. That in order to be successful in an arena, this could be, see, I'm streaming to LinkedIn. It could be that your work life balance isn't great, but in order for you to be able to provide for your family, you gotta maybe spend more time at the office. But at what cost? Obviously, I now know in my later years that ignoring a social life for, we'll say 10 years, it could have been a little bit longer than that, that I've obviously had to accelerate that in my adult life. And people might be surprised that, oh, you're quite well spoken on video. That's consistency. That I do fumble through it a little bit. My podcast probably helps because it's got 7 years of experience under that I'm faking to people nearly every week, that I'm going to become more and more confident in talking, to the point that doing a live, okay, it was a challenge that I signed up to do it for all of March. That, okay, we're nearly the end of March. They're far easier than they were at the beginning of it. So the lessons that I want to leave you with is obviously maybe being a little bit not harsh on yourself, but maybe being a little bit more regimented, and being, from a nutritional point of view, maybe you need a meal plan. Maybe you need to be more structured, and have a little bit more confinement. I'm not going to say restriction, confinement, to say you're allowed to have this. So say, I'll use an example. You could either do it from a macro perspective. If people don't know what that is, I'll link in this description of what it is. You can do it from calorie perspective, calorie counting. You can do it as portions, so portion size, hand size portion. That's 4 ways in which you could be more disciplined with your nutrition than allowing yourself to do it through convenience. As okay, if I wanted to, in my vicinity of where I live, I could walk to a takeaway. I could call Domino's. I could probably walk to Domino's because it's not that far away. But I choose to be more regimented in my nutrition. This is not a judgment of anybody. And the only time that I deviated from that was last week, because I had no power. So I had no means to be able to cook the way that I've become accustomed to. So thus I'm going to have to go to, I went in the case of, there's no plug for them as a company, but KFC, because it's a better choice than McDonald's in terms of, well, at least the chicken is, in this sense, whole chicken. It's not the best choice, but it's a better choice than I had available to myself. And then from an attitude perspective, you are able to get better at these things. I perceive that athletes make it look easy from doing whatever specific skill set they've got, because they've banged on that drum for so long. And I'm not going to go into the 10,000 hours because I don't agree with it, because I don't think it's 100% accurate. But they 100% literally have consistency 101 of, I'm going to outwork the other individual, but it's doing those things repeatedly from a consistency perspective, and the same is a discipline one. Is I'm gonna, in order for me to be great, I'm gonna outwork my opposition, and that's just two ways, and there's a few more. So I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I didn't rant too much. If you've got to the end, and I didn't put this at the beginning, so I apologize. Do put hashtag replay, and then I know what time you're watching this. So from me to you, have a wonderful Monday, or have a wonderful day when you're watching this, and I will catch you again very soon. All right, take care.